Court is now back in session. You may be seated. At this time, the defense will be presenting its case and calling its first witness to the stand. Defense, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, the defense calls Colonel Catch-22 to the stand. Could you please state your name and rank for the court?
My name is Cathcart, and I'm a colonel in the United States Army.
What is your role as colonel in the Army?
Well, I'm in charge of flight operations, mission requirements, personnel requirements, duty assignments, things like that.
What squadron are you in command of?
The 256 Bombardier Squadron in Pianosa, Italy.
Thank you. Your Honor, at this time, I would like to enter Colonel Cathcart as an expert in military procedures and affairs. She has more than adequate background, training, and experience in this field to meet the requirements as an expert.
Consider the witness qualified as an expert.
Thank you, Your Honor. What is your stance on the duties entailed as commander of the 256 Bombardment Squadron?
Well, I hold my men to the highest standards. As you know, our mission requirement is 80 missions must be completed. It's 40 higher than the standard level. So as you can see, I hold my men accountable and to high standards.
Why did you raise the standard of the missions?
Well, for a number of reasons, just to get them more experience in the war, and to have them as efficient assets in the Army, but most importantly to make myself look good. I'm trying to move up in the ranks as a general, but yeah, just to make our superior officers proud and make America proud of us.
How did the men under your command react to the raised mission standard?
As I know, a few men.
Your Honor, calls for speculation.
Your Honor, it's not calling for speculation, it's just merely stating how she saw them react, how they approached her, or what they did.
As commanding officer, I think that's reasonable knowledge for this witness to have. I'll allow the question to continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you like me to repeat?
Yes, please.
Okay. How did the men under your command react to the raised mission standard?
A few men approached me with concerns, but I'm not going to let people below me question my authority. I believe that I have good reason to raise the standards.
You said that one or two people approached you about the high mission standard. Could you recount one of these experiences?
Yes, the chaplain did approach me with concerns about raising the standards, but I don't think that he's credible to question my reasoning for raising the standards, so I sent him off with a plum tomato. Colonel Cord and I grow those, if you didn't know. But I sent him off with a little plum tomato just so he felt like he accomplished something, but he's not going to change my mind.
Thank you. Colonel Cathcart, you mentioned in your affidavit a black eye. Could you please tell the court what this is?
Yeah, a black eye is part of a system I made up to keep track of my records. So a black eye is something negative that has happened under my command, and then I counter those.
Objection on relevancy.
Where are these questions going exactly?
It's going to show examples of black eyes and feathers in the caps and how Yossarian was related to them and how they relate to her experiences with the military and our overall theme of corruption within it.
And this has bearing on one of the particular charges that are before the court today?
It goes to show a general theme of corruption that influences all the men of the military and why Yossarian would take certain actions.
I find myself confused by this, but I'll allow a little bit further continuity with the line of questioning. I'd like to see it get somewhere directly related to a charge sooner rather than later. Prosecution counselors, you may revisit this if you feel like we are meandering in some direction that is not productive. But again, please, let's get somewhere.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Could you please tell the court examples of feathers in the cap and black eyes?
Sure. So a couple black eyes have been some missions not going as planned. For example, Ferrara, Bologna. A couple things around that I have established, such as the skeet range, and a couple people as well are on that list. Milo, but Milo is an example of a feather in the cap as well, and same with Yossarian and the chaplain hanging around the officers club.
Could you please explain how Yossarian was both black eye and a feather in the cap?
Well, for starters, he is a feather in my cap because we awarded him a medal, and not many squadrons can say they have soldiers that were awarded medals, but also he flew over the Ferrara bomb point twice, which was not the plan that I said, but he did get the mission done. So that is, in a sense, he was both.
Thank you. Your Honor, at this time, I would like to have this marked as Defense Exhibit 1. For your reference, I will show you in a second. It is the mission report
Considered entered as Exhibit 1.
as
Oh, you got it.
as mission report for Ferrara. Do you recognize this document, Colonel Cathcart?
Yes.
Could you please tell the court what it is?
This is the mission report for Operation Ferrara.
Thank you. And is that your signature at the very bottom of the page?
It is.
Is this a fair and accurate representation of your report on the mission?
It is accurate.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to have this marked or entered, Defense Exhibit 1 entered into evidence.
Are there any further questions?
Yes.
Continue.
Could you please recount to the court what the mission report states and the summary of the events happening on the mission report?
Objection, Your Honor, relevancy.
Yeah, I would like to see some direct bearing here. I'm still kind of wondering what all this has to do with any of the charges before us. Is there anything related to what happened in Ferrara that is relevant to one of the charges, or where are we going with this?
Your Honor, I wanted to show that the report does not actually reflect the actual events of what happened in Ferrara, and going to show a pattern of this in the military, that there's a lot of reports that are falsified or do not recount accurate results, which could also be pertinent to the information in this trial and the charges against you, sir.
Well, let me ask again, is there a particular charge where a report has been entered that you are seeking to draw skepticism towards? What charge am I meant to direct this towards?
I am meant to direct it towards the absent without leave in Rome. The report, in the end, Colonel Cathcart and Colonel Ford offered two different reports to Yossarian, one where he would be charged and...
Is that relevant to a particular charge before us?
The absence without leave to Rome.
So this is particularly focused on absence without leave and the paperwork and reporting that, okay.
Yes, sir.
I'll allow this to continue. Let's try to zero in on that so we're not talking about a pointless mission that has nothing to do with the charges in front of us. Continue. Prosecution, your objection is noted again for the record.
Thank you, Your Honor. Could you please detail on that report what it says?
The unit was designated to bomb the city of Ferrara and blowing up a bridge. It occurred over a 7-day period to destroy the bridge, and it ended up becoming a success.
Could you please tell me what happened in the actual mission?
Well, a lot of the men were hesitant to bomb the city, and that's why it took us so long. It was supposed to be a 1-day objective. However, Yossarian's plane flew over twice because they were a little bit concerned with their positioning the first go around, and they went around the second time. However, going around the second time proved to be problematic because some of his men inside the plane were killed.
So you're saying that does not accurately reflect the actual events?
I would say that there are a little bit of inconsistencies.
Thank you. Well, speaking of Yossarian, what did you do after the death of his friend Nately?
He was obviously in no state to be of service to the military at that time, so I authorized emergency leave to Rome.
Objection, Your Honor. Just to clarify, what leave of Rome are we speaking about? His absence where he went with Milo?
Speaking of the first absence, when he first went to Rome.
You may continue.
Why did you do this?
Well, I could see he was very upset, and yeah, he is very popular among the men, so he was in no state to fly, and I figured that it was probably best to give him some time off to just heal and come back ready to fly again.
Thank you. Your Honor, at this time, I would like to have this marked as Defense Exhibit 2. It is the first we pass the word into Yossarian. There's no reference. We pass the first one. Do you recognize this document, Colonel Cathcart?
I do.
Could you please tell the court what it is?
This is my authority for Yossarian to leave to Rome.
Is your signature on the bottom of the page?
It is.
Is this a fair and accurate representation of the leave passage of Yossarian in Rome the first time?
This is accurate.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to move this into evidence.
Consider it marked as Exhibit 2 for the defense.
Thank you. So after Yossarian went to Rome the first time, did he return?
He did.
And are you aware of whether or not he went back to Rome?
I believe he did go back.
So, Colonel Cathcart, after he went back to Rome, what happened?
He came back, and Colonel Korn and I met with him, and we said this was actually after an incident occurred. After we had met with him, he was stabbed by Nate Lee's ex-girlfriend. And so we said, this is what's going to happen. You have been a black eye and a feather in our cap, so we're going to give you two options. We're going to send you home because you have been such...
Objection, Your Honor, relevancy.
It's relating to the absence of food charge when she was brought back, Your Honor. It was showing that there was 2 reports made of this incident, one of which he would be charged and one of which he would not. And it's showing that
There's some ambiguity about the nature of the incident and its charges. I'll allow it.
thank you, Your Honor.
Objection is overruled.
So there were 2 reports made, one saying that he was stabbed by a Nazi assassin and the other saying that he was stabbed during a black market operation. We said that if he did not accept our offer to befriend us and we would send him home, if he did not accept, we would court-martial him, and he decided to accept the offer.
So, just to clarify for the court, you made 2 different reports for the same event.
Yes, we did.
What are military procedures regarding reports?
There's one report made for one event in time. Generally, there's no falsifications on these reports. It's strictly facts.
Well, what would the military's regulations warrant in response to your actions and Colonel Korn's actions in creating 2 reports or falsifying other documents?
It would be a violation of the code of conduct, and generally we would probably be discharged.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Prosecution, you may cross-examine.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Cathcart, did you authorize most of Milo's flights?
Milo has a business, as you all know, the M&M Enterprises, and yes, I did authorize those as he was helping us with monetary gains.
So he's free to do whatever he wants as long as it's in the best interest of everyone, correct?
I would say he is free to do things in the limits that, yes, the syndicate the purpose of the syndicate is to benefit everyone and to benefit myself and Korn as well.
And you even are quoted as saying he's a feather in your cap, correct?
He is also a black eye. He bombed the squadron, which obviously is not something that we look nicely upon, but yes, he does give us monetary gains, so yes, he's a feather in our cap.
And with your experience with him, has been positive?
Objection on the relevance?
I'm wondering the same thing, Counselor. What is the relevance
It
of
goes
the
to do
questions
with,
about Milo?
Cathcart's relation to Milo and the fact that he is indeed authorized to fly whenever and wherever he wants. And it's, sorry, let me recollect my thoughts. And it has to do with their relationship.
Is that relevant to any of the charges?
It's relevant to Milo because defense was claiming that he did not have authorization to fly.
Well, given that you've already established and has been answered that he did have authorization to fly, is there some relevance in continuing this line of questioning? Are you going somewhere
Yes,
new?
it's, reliability and trustworthiness.
I'll allow 1 or 2 more questions on this, but let's focus on the defendant rather than on a previous witness. I don't think that's particularly fruitful for you, Counselor. But continue briefly.
Yes, court's indulgence, Your Honor.
The witness may step down. Defense, you may call your next witness to the stand.
The defense calls Arthur to the stand. Could you please state your name and occupation for the court?
My name is Arfi, and I'm the lead navigator in Pianosa.
What is your relationship to your Syrian?
I would say we're acquaintances.
Who gave you the official leave and where did you go?
Colonel Cathcart, and I went to Rome.
Where did you stay while on this leave in Rome?
The apartment's authorized by him.
Who did you see from your squadron while on leave?
Yossarian.
And what was your reaction to seeing Yossarian at the hotel?
I was pretty surprised, he was pretty shaken up.
And how did he react to you?
Well, as I said before, he was pretty shaken up, and then I told him that I raped and murdered a girl, but,
just to clarify for the court, could you repeat that statement?
I raped and murdered a girl.
Can you explain to the court why you did this to the girl?
Well, her name was Michaela, she was a servant girl, and, well, first I raped her, and then I held her in a closet.
The relevancy is the arrest of Yossarian and the wrongful arrest of Yossarian and the importance of the standards of the military regarding warrants and arrests.
A little skeptical here. Can you clarify what you mean by the importance of warrants and arrest? What exactly are you seeking to establish here, counselors?
The wrongful warrant for Yossarian.
So you're seeking to establish via this witness's testimony that the arrest of Yossarian was incorrect?
That the charge of him being without leave is incorrect.
I'm struggling to see the connection, but I'll allow a few more questions here if you can get to some conclusion that makes sense. Again, prosecution, you may revisit this, but let's try and connect the dots quickly here.
How did Yossarian respond to
Objection, Your Honor, calls for hearsay.
the witness was
Yeah, what is the question first? How did Yossarian respond to?
You telling him your reasoning behind murdering the girl?
Well, first he said I was going to jail, and that's just ridiculous.
No, this is a fair piece of testimony. This is just a direct statement made by the defendant to the witness. You may continue.
Were there any authority figures present?
Well, after the civilian siren curfew sirens came on, 2 MPs showed up.
What was their purpose being there?
They arrested Yossarian.
And why did they arrest Yossarian?
I'm not entirely sure, but I was happy because I just raped and murdered a girl and threw her out the window, but I'm fine, so.
No further questions.
Prosecution may cross-examine.
No further questions.
Witness may step down. Defense, you may call your next witness.
The defense calls Major Coverly to the stand. Could you please state your name and rank for the court?
I'm Major DeCoverly, and I am in the Air Force.
What is your job in the Air Force?
I oversee the men, and also I make sure that on leave they have places to stay.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to enter Major DeCoverly as an expert in military affairs and military affairs due to his vast experience in the field.
Consider the witness qualified.
What is your attitude towards your duties as Major of the 256th Squadron?
I'm content with it.
What response do you get towards your duties from the soldiers who you direct?
Generally, they're happy with the work I do. I put a lot of effort into making sure that leave for them goes all right.
And how do you make leave for them all right?
Um, After we capture a city or town, I make sure that I can find a home or place for both the enlisted men and officers to stay.
How much work and effort do you put into setting up these houses?
I would say I put a lot of effort in because generally I'm at the front line trying to find a nice place to stay.
What cities particularly stand out to you concerning your mission to find houses and rooms for the officers?
I'd say Rome is an important one. I worked really hard there. I definitely found a lot of places.
What is the line of questioning seeking to establish here?
Yossarian's the charge against Yossarian for leave for AWOL and how his authorities promote the visitation to the places that he works to provide for the officers.
Does this have some bearing on the charge itself?
Yes.
Can you explain what exactly are we seeking to prove here as far as this witness's testimony as it regards or reflects directly on whether or not our defendant was absent without leave?
It provides information on why he was in Rome.
Okay, but does that have any bearing on the guilt or innocence as far as whether he was there with permission or not with permission?
Well, his authority figures give him permission, and this is majorly covertly promoting the visitation to Rome.
Well, let's consider that stipulated too. If you have some questions that have a direct bearing on the witness's behavior and presence and permission or not, lack of permission, let's get to those rather than continuing to establish what this defendant has been doing as far as Rome. Consider that understood.
So what did you tell all of your men about these rooms in Rome?
I told them that whenever they were on leave, that these rooms in Rome were available to them and that I encouraged them to stay there.
No further questions.
Prosecution, cross-examination.
So you admit soldiers were on leave when they went to Rome, right?
Yes.
And Yossarian could have easily been one of these soldiers.
Yes.
Do you have any track of which soldiers were on leave and in Rome?
Personally, that is not in my job, but I provide the places for them.
And whose job is it to track all these soldiers?
I would say it would be in my superiors, both Cathcart and Corn.
No further questions.
Witness may step down. Defense, you may call your next witness.
The defense calls Samson to the stand. Could you please state your name, age, and occupation for the court?
My name is Kit Sampson. I am 16 years old and I'm a pilot for the U.S. military.
What is the legal age to join the military?
18 years old.
So how did your request to join the military get accepted?
I lied about my age.
And what was the military's reaction to this?
They didn't even really notice. They just let me in.
Why did you want to join the military?
I felt like I couldn't wait till I was 18 to join the cause. I really wanted to fight for my country and protect my nation.
And what was your reaction to the military and the way that they do things?
It wasn't like anything I thought it would be. There was a lack of patriotism. People regularly disobeyed orders.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to mark this as Defense Exhibit 4.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Counselor, but I think we're only on Exhibit 3.
Yes.
Yes. Kid Sanson, are you aware of what this is?
I am, yes.
Could you explain this one?
Could I see the document? Thank you. Thank you.
Could you explain to me what this is?
This is the autopsy report for my death.
And what does it include?
It shows that I was cut in half.
Your Honor, I would now like to move Defense Exhibit 4 into evidence.
Consider it marked as evidence.
Kid Sanson, how were you cut in half?
Relevancy, Your Honor?
Yeah, what is the relevance of this?
It goes to show Mick Watt's recklessness.
Which has a bearing on,
The assault charge against Hussein for Mick Watt.
okay, you may continue.
How were you cut in half?
The propeller of a plane sliced me in half.
And who was flying the plane that shot you?
Mick Watt was.
Could you explain to the court how this situation played out?
Yes, I was on the beach with a bunch of the other guys, including Yosarian and Nurse Duckett and Dunbar and other people. And I was in a raft and I heard Mick Watt flying. And I looked up and he was flying above me and his propeller sliced me in half.
What was your reaction to Mick Watt flying so recklessly?
I really wasn't surprised. He did it all the time, flying low, so.
And what actions has your commanding officers taken to correct him on his mistakes while flying?
Nothing. None of the superiors have really ever reprimanded him or talked to him about flying too low.
What kind of training on flying is given by higher ranked pilots or officers?
There is none.
Would you have felt safer and better prepared if there was more
Objection,
training?
Your Honor, calls for speculation.
Oh, finish the question first.
Would you have felt safer and better prepared if there was more training for the pilots?
I think that's a fair question. Given the position of the witness, you may answer the question.
I would have felt a lot safer. I never really thought that just by being in a raft in the ocean, one of my fellow patriots would have cut me in half.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Prosecution may cross-examine.
Yes, Your Honor.
So you admit that like no one was obeying orders,
Yeah.
and were you ever threatened by Mick Watt's flying before you were sliced in half?
I was never really around, like, other than the time in the ocean. I never really felt that threatened.
So you hadn't seen Mick Watt's flying before?
I mean, I had seen
as
it.
you
I
just said?
had seen it, and it was a known fact that he flew low,
Uh,
and you can hear the propeller.
Are you qualified by any means to talk about how other people should fly?
I'm not specifically qualified, but I think the fact that it killed me gives me reason to believe that it
Are
is
you trying to
dangerous.
touch the plane?
I was,
So
but
wouldn't
I
that
should not be able to touch the plane. due to the fact that it was so
But you
low.
still tried to touch the funds.
I did.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Witness may step down. Defense, you may call your next witness to the stand.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, the defense calls Dr. Nika to the stand. Could you please state your name and occupation for the court?
My name is Dr. Nika, and I'm the staff physician,
What squadron are you staff physician for?
the 256th Squadron.
What are your duties as staff physician?
Basically to treat, diagnose patients, whether it's a mental or physical ailment.
What educational background do you have that qualifies you for this position?
I have my degree from med school, and I also used to run my own practice back in the United States.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to enter Dr. Nika as an expert in the medical field, specializing in the treatment and diagnosis of injuries, medical conditions, and mental health.
Consider the witness qualified as a medical expert.
Thank you, Your Honor. What is your relationship with Yossarian?
I'd say we're pretty good friends. You know, I can always turn to him and talk to him whenever I need him.
Why is he one of the few people you can turn and talk to?
Well, everyone's crazy, but he's always willing to lend an ear. I mean, I have a lot of problems. My life is a lot harder than everyone else's.
Why are you unable to ground them if everyone's crazy?
Well, there's a rule called Catch-22.
What is this rule?
Basically, if someone comes to me saying that they're crazy, I have to make them sane, and they cannot be sent home.
What can you tell me about Yossarian's medical history?
He's come to me many times asking me to ground him. However, I simply can't. He also has a liver condition that I've been able to diagnose him with.
Objection on relevancy.
I'm going to show that Yossarian has a past history of actually being sick, and it goes towards the malingering incidents, Your Honor.
I'll allow it.
Thank you, Your Honor. So what actions did you take in response to diagnosing Yossarian with a liver condition?
I did give him a note saying that he could have all the fruit and fruit juices he'd like.
Thank you. Your Honor, at this time, I would like to have Ms. Martha Spence be considered for. Thank you. So it is the note that Dr. Nika was liver conditions and Do you recognize this, Dr. Nika?
Yes, that's the note I wrote.
Is that your signature at the bottom?
Yes.
Is that a fair and accurate representation of the note you gave Yossarian?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to move Defense Exhibit 4 into evidence.
Consider it marked as Exhibit 4 for the defense.
Thank you, Your Honor. What were your requirements while in the Army?
Well, as I said before, treat and diagnose patients, and I also have to complete a certain number of flights.
How did you complete these flights and flight hours?
Well, I made an arrangement with McWatt so he could put me as having done them when I really did not.
What was the reaction of the commanding officers in your squadron to your arrangement with McWatt?
No one really knew about it besides McWatt and Yossarian. It tends to go unnoticed.
What happened as a result of you being on the flight manifest but not in the actual plane?
Well, when McWatt crashed into a mountain, I was supposed to be on that flight, but everyone just thought I was dead, even though I was right there.
What did your fellow members of your medical squadron do about this?
Nothing, they just declared me dead.
How did you feel about being declared dead and about your whole time in the 256 Squadron?
Objection, Your Honor, relevancy.
It's going to show that, again, there's the military reports there's an extreme inaccuracy when in fact when a doctor who was alive and living was declared dead while in fact she was standing right next to her fellow men in arms.
And so this is a continuity of your previous argument about inaccuracies in documentation. Okay, I'll allow the line of questioning to continue as long as that's the focus of it.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. So, how did you feel about being declared dead and about your time in the 256 Squadron?
I mean, obviously it's a horrible thing, but everything's horrible. I mean, people are dying, and I just have so many problems. And
could you please describe to the court your physical and mental state by the end of your time in Pianos Italy?
Well, physically I was fine, but mentally, I mean, I was thought to be dead, ignored, shunned by everyone. I lost my family and my job.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Prosecution?
You're a close friend to Usarian, correct?
Yes, I would say so.
And you're a licensed physician,
Yes.
and in your witness statement, you even admit one of your own witnesses, Dunbar, is crazy, correct?
Yes.
Why did you give Usarian permission to take the fruits?
For his liver condition,
How does this improve his condition?
because fruit is good for the liver.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Witness may step down. Defense, you may call your next witness to the stand.
Your Honor, the defense calls Doc White to the stand. Could you please state your name and occupation for the court?
I'm Doc White, and I'm a specialist physician.
What are your duties as specialist physician?
I manage and oversee the conditions of the troops in the hospital.
What educational background has qualified you for this job in the military?
I went to medical school, and beyond that, I have years of experience as a doctor.
Your Honor, I would now like to enter Doc White as an expert in the medical field.
Consider the witness qualified as an expert.
Doc White, where do you work as a physician?
I work at the hospital on Pianosa,
What squadron do you work with?
the 256th mainly.
Who did you encounter in the hospital on Thanksgiving?
I encountered Usarian.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to enter this as Defense Exhibit 5. Could you explain what this document is?
This is a form for Giuseppe, and it says that he is stable and healthy.
Could you?
Oh, I'm mistaken. I'm sorry. It says he died. I couldn't read.
Your Honor, at this time, I would also like to enter this as Defense Exhibit 6. Yes, you can.
Get a mark first.
Yeah.
All right.
Could you also explain what this document is?
Okay, this is a document on the pain and condition of Usarian, who came to me with problems of seeing everything twice.
What conclusion did you come to concerning his claims?
I came to the conclusion that he did see everything twice because I tested him by holding up 2 fingers, and then he saw that, and then I put away 2 fingers, and asked him again, and he said he saw 2 fingers.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to Defense Exhibit 5 to move into evidence.
Yes, you may consider both of them moved into evidence.
Where did you go from there after the test?
After the tests, I moved Usarian into a different part of the hospital where he could be cared for.
And what happened after you moved him?
After I moved him, he had another person staying in his room, and his roommate passed away during the night.
What did you ask Yossarian to do?
I asked Yossarian to play the part of this dead roommate because his family had come all the way from the United States to see him, and I didn't want to let them down.
And what motivated Yossarian to dress up?
I kind of made a deal with him. I was like, if you do this favor for me, I'll do a favor for you.
And what happened to Yossarian after that?
I did not see Yossarian after I supplied him with bandages so he could pretend to be Giuseppe.
How often are patients unsupervised within the hospital?
Very often.
No further questions.
Prosecution, you may cross-examine.
What did you ask Yossarian to do for you again? Just to reiterate.
I asked him to play the part of Giuseppe by wearing bandages and just pretending to be him for his family.
And what did you offer him in return for this?
I offered him in turn that I would keep his liver condition as a secret because it had caused problems before.
And you say he saw everything twice?
Yes.
Your Honor, in the book, there's nothing. He thought he was lying in the book. Yeah, in the book he says he was healthy.
During the test,
Your Honor,
he saw
if I may, the evidence that the reports that are entered into evidence do say that Yossarian did see everything twice, and there was no objection to it being mentioned in evidence.
But did you?
Are you
believe-
suggesting that the witness is skeptical of the defendant's claims?
See.
You may ask some questions about that.
So, did you genuinely believe he was sick?
I believe so because I don't think he would have.
Yeah.
He also he said that Yossarian had blood condition.
They can't bring the book on, the book already did to us.
Well,
It's a question of the accuracy of the testimony and the witnesses. Witnesses have to tell the truth. You can't have them read from the text, but they have to tell the truth as far as accurate testimony. So is there something about this testimony that is inaccurate?
Yes, the fact that he says he believes he was sick.
Let's see the,
And Robbie, did you say you don't want to do this condition that you don't have it?
Yeah.
yes, where is it?
30 seconds.
Well, we're not going to wait forever, prosecution.
All right. I'll keep the line of questioning going. And what was your position again?
Can you repeat the question?
What was your position in the hospital?
Oh, I'm a specialist physician.
And did you meet with Giuseppe's family personally?
I did not meet with them personally, but I knew they were around.
So then why did you want Yossarian to go in?
Because for a whole family to come out to see their dying son, I thought, and for them to be disappointed, I thought someone should take their place.
No further questions.
Witness may step down. Defense, you may call your next witness to the stand.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, the defense calls Dunbar to the stand. Could you please state your name and occupation for the court?
I am Dunbar and I'm a bombardier in the 256th Bombardment Bomb Squadron.
What are your feelings towards the war?
I've hated this war ever since I got here.
Why?
Well, of course, I want to elongate my life, and every time that I get orders to fly, it shortens it. And you never know when you're going to go home. You probably will never go home because every time you get close to coming home, they make more flights that you have to fly, more missions, and more times to die.
How do you feel about this mission number being raised?
I hate it. I don't want to die. I don't know why I'm still here. They could just bring in other people, but yet
Objection, Your Honor, relevancy.
Goes to show the state of mind of Yossarian and the men within the camp relating to his actions.
I'm skeptical of that. This certainly seems to reflect the state of mind of the witness, but the witness doesn't seem to be testifying directly to any knowledge of the defendant's state of mind. So if that's your goal, let's get our questions focused on that. Unless this particular witness's mindset has some bearing on a charge that I'm not seeing, let's try to refrain from circling too far away from actual material evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. What is your relationship to Yossarian?
He's a really close friend of mine.
Do you hang out often? Do you anything
Most
like
of the
that?
time, most off times, and every part.
Had you guys ever talked about how you both felt about the mission number being raised?
Yeah, I mean, most of the people, and Yossarian included, we all hated and wanted to go home, but we had to follow our superiors.
What else happened during your time in the military?
Well, I got ill a few times and ended up in the military hospital on base.
Was Yossarian ever with you?
Oh, yeah, he was with me a couple times.
What happened at this hospital?
Well, the doctors and nurses didn't pay much attention to the patients. And an example of this is the man in white gauze. He was staying in like the same room I was when I was staying there one time, and they didn't even know his name, and they only found out that he was dead because they took his temperature, not when he died or how he died, and didn't even know who he was.
Was Yossarian with you during this time?
Yes, he was.
Could you please tell the court about the experience of you being disappeared while at the hospital?
Oh, well, I was saying things, and I guess the doctors didn't like what I was saying, so they decided to disappear me.
What does it mean to be disappeared?
It means to be taken away without a trace. Basically, I was exploiting the military, so they took me away and did it kind of under the radar so it would be subtle.
What other major event occurred while you were at the hospital?
Well, I did attack Nurse Duckett, and I did sexually harass her. I took full responsibility for this charge, and I thought it was done and over with then, but I guess not.
What happened as a result of this incident?
Well, Colonel Cathcart tried and convict Yossarian, but I took full responsibility for it and thought it was.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to have this marked as Defense Exhibit 7. Confession statement. Thank you. Do you recognize this statement? You can open up in the room.
Yes, I do.
Could you please tell the court what it is?
It's my confession statement that I signed under Colonel Cathcart.
So this is your signature on the necessary and marked lines throughout the report? Okay. Is this a fair and accurate representation of the confession you gave to Colonel Cathcart.
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to move Defense Exhibit 7 into evidence.
Consider it marked as Exhibit 7 for the defense.
Thank you. Could you please tell the court what your statement says?
I, Dunbar, of the 256th Bombardment Squadron, on the 20th day of February 1941, did unlawfully assault and grope Nurse Duckett. I assume all guilt and responsibility for my actions, and am aware of the repercussions and consequences of this signed confession statement. Knowing all this in front of Colonel Cathcart on the 21st day of February, I make my confession of guilt.
Thank you, Ms. Dunbar. You mentioned earlier that you and Yossarian and other members of the 256th Squadron live in constant terror, both in the air and on base. Why is this?
Well, you never know what's going to happen with the superiors and the subordinates in the air or on the ground. An example of this is when Milo bombed the base and didn't even get punished for it because he was able to convince our superiors that it was a good thing that he bombed the base and good for everyone. Another example from the ground is when superiors, you do something and the superiors don't necessarily like exactly what you're doing, they threaten to take you out and kill you. So you just constantly live in fear no matter what you do.
What is it like to be under the command of Colonel Cathcart in the 256th Squadron?
You work like dogs all the time and you never know what to do because he constantly...
Objection, Your Honor, relevancy.
Goes to show, again, the character of Yossarian and the terrible conditions in which the 256th Squadron leads, and again, the corruption of all of the officers involved.
I'm more curious about it as far as it relates to the context of the confession and the charge of assault against Nurse Duckett. I'd like to hear a little bit more about this environment and this witness's particular state of mind. I will again caution, though, if you're trying to prove something about the defendant, you must make your questions and testimony directly relevant to that. As far as this particular witness, again, I would like to hear a little bit more about the context of the events in the hospital, but continue.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
What is it like to be under the command of Colonel Cathcart in the 256th Bombardment Squadron?
It's terrifying and you work like dogs and you never know what to do because he changes his mind like that. 1 minute you're doing something that he asked you to do and the next minute he tells you to do the exact opposite and tries to threaten to punish you for it.
Could you please describe to the court a specific instance of this?
Well, when the chaplain Yossarian and I we were requested and ordered to go to the officers club every night, and one day the person who ordered us to do it yelled at the chaplain for being there because General Deedle did not want us there and threatened to punish us.
What did he do in response to you guys actually being there?
Objection, relevancy.
Yes, how does this tie into things? It seems like we are getting a little bit off into the wilderness.
It's still going back to the witness's state of mind during his time in the military.
Let's fast forward through some of this, but ask your question and then let's move to something directly pertinent if you could.
Okay.
Go ahead and answer.
Thank you. Would you like me to repeat it again?
Yeah.
Could you please describe to the court a specific instance, like what did he do after after he was upset and yelled at the chaplain you and Yossarian, the meeting officers?
Oh, he threw us out,
Objection,
all of
relevancy.
us.
How so, Counselor?
No, I testify, so someone else did.
But this is directly witnessed, as far as I understand, unless the question and answer is straying pretty far off. This is something the witness directly observed, correct?
Yes.
Correct? Okay, yeah, I'll allow it.
So what did the Colonel Cathcart tell you guys after he yelled at you, and what did he do to you guys after he berated you guys for being in the officers club?
He told us we could not come back and to not come back and then threw us out.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Okay, prosecution may cross-examine.
Is this the civil one, Dunbar?
No, it is not.
And why in your witness statement did it say I've been fighting in this
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
state of mind of the witness?
I'll allow it. It does state that in the witness statement.
Guess I got mixed up.
And did Yozerian assault Nurse Duckett?
I took the responsibility of it, and I
But
believe it was mostly
That doesn't
me.
excuse Yozerian from
Well, I
what he
took
did,
full
does it?
responsibility, and I did make
Objection,
a
Your Honor,
confession
counsel
to
is testifying there.
I'll sustain it. Yes, please stick to questions only, Counselor.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Did Yozerian grope Nurse Duckett?
I just know what I did. I can't testify for anybody else.
You were in the hospital with Nurse Duckett, Nurse Duckett and Yozerian, though, correct?
Yeah, I was.
So didn't you see the entire incident unfold?
I saw what I did.
And you admit to grabbing Nurse Duckett, correct?
I mean, yeah, I did. I wrote a confession statement.
Why did you grab Nurse Duckett?
I thought it'd be funny.
Did anything spur your actions to grab Miss Duckett?
The fact that I thought it would be funny. And, you know, I try to get a laugh out of everyone.
What was Yozerian doing at the time?
He was in the room, but
Objection, Your Honor, calls for something the witness can't know. It's speculation.
She was there at the event.
It does seem like a question directly pertaining to what the witness observed, so it seems reasonable to me. Continue.
Did you see what happened before you drove Nurse Duckett?
no, I was too focused on what my action was about.
Wasn't she pushed into you?
Don't necessarily. I was focused on what I was grabbing.
In the book, Your Honor, on page 293, it says, let's see right here. Dunbar, who had watched from the beginning, sprang forward on his bed without warning and flung both arms around her bosom from behind. Is that not clear? Or am I mistaken?
So you're suggesting that
I'm
the
suggesting
testimony
that-
is inaccurate?
Yes.
In what sense?
She's saying that she was only focused on what she was doing, but if you read the book here, you see that Dunbar had been watching from the beginning. But they're arguing that she didn't.
This seems like a very splitting of hair kind of argument. The witness is clearly testifying that they did what you just read, at the very least. Is there some driving urge to get some other aspect of what the witness
Yes,
observed?
The fact that she saw Yozerian grope Nurse Duckett.
So your concern is that the witness is not being truthful in what strictly they observed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Well, it does seem to me like a sort of vague kind of point. What exactly did the witness see or not see? Certainly, can we stipulate, can the witness acknowledge that they did see Yosarian interact in some way with Nurse Duckett?
I saw them interact, but I didn't necessarily see him grab her. I was too focused on my actions.
All right, I'll revisit this point later.
Thank you. Well, you did see Yozerian do something to Nurse Duckett, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, ask and answer.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Witness may step down. Defense may call its next witness.
Your Honor, this time the defense calls Chaplain Tapman to the stand. Could you please state your name and occupation for the court?
My name is Chaplain Albert Taylor Tapman, and I'm the assigned chaplain to the 256th Bombardment Squadron.
What's your duties as chaplain entail?
I'm there for the emotional support of all the men in the squadron. I am also, because of my time in the seminary, an avid crisis counselor.
Do you have any educational background?
I do. I had to go to the seminary in order to become a chaplain, and I also underwent rigorous military training in order to be stationed here at Pianosa.
Your Honor, at this time I would like to offer Chaplain Tapman as an expert in religious affairs and crisis counseling.
Consider the witness qualified as an expert in those areas.
Thank you, Your Honor. Could you please tell us a little bit about your time stationed in Pianosa, Italy in the 256th Bombardment Squadron?
No one seems to know what they want here. I'm constantly being told to do things, and then the next day I'm being yelled at for following those orders. Everything is upside down in this war.
You mentioned being ordered to do something one day and it changing the next. Could you please provide the court of an example of this?
Oh, there are several examples of this, but two prime examples are when Colonel Cathcart ordered me to go into the officers' club. For days he was happy with me being there, but then all of a sudden he kicked me out for no reason. And then Colonel Cathcart showed me an article from the Saturday Evening Post about a chaplain in England who was saying prayers before the missions. Colonel Cathcart told me that he wanted me to do the same thing but say prayers for a tighter bomb pattern.
What was wrong with saying a prayer for a better bomb pattern?
He wanted me, a man of God, a believer in God, to say prayers for a tighter bomb pattern without any mention of God at all. He also wanted me to exclude the enlisted men from the prayers, which as a chaplain totally goes against my beliefs.
What does this reaction to the prayer request show you as an expert in religious affairs and crisis counseling?
It shows me that Colonel Cathcart is a troubled man with conflicted ideals and plagued with decisions that cause him anxiety and distress.
What is your relationship to Yossarian?
Yossarian is a close friend of mine. I trust him and I go to him for many of my issues. He's constantly telling me about how many missions they're tasked to fly with, and I can't help but think about how many missions that number is.
Have you ever done anything regarding this high mission count number?
I've tried to go to Colonel Cathcart many times about the issue. However, each time I go, I'm dismissed. You have to understand, I'm a very shy man. I don't like to challenge authority. But when I finally worked up the courage to talk to Colonel Cathcart and Colonel Corn about the issue, they ignored me and sent me away with a plum tomato from their smuggling business.
What later happened regarding the plum tomato you were given?
Objection, Your Honor, relevancy.
Your Honor, if you would let me continue with a few more questions, I will bring it around to show that the military it will show that there's a history where she was charged and tried in the same day of a fake court. It will represent that the same thing could be happening to Yossarian.
No, I will allow it. I'm curious to see what this has to do with all of the rest of the rather concerning comments that have been made about the organization of the squadron so far. Continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you like me to repeat the question? So what later happened regarding the plum tomato you were given?
I was falsely accused of signing Washington Irving and censoring letters. I was then accused of stealing the plum tomato that was given to me, and then I was arrested.
What did they charge you with?
Well, Nately had just died, so I thought they were convicting me of Nately's death. So when I asked what charges I was being given, they told me that they didn't even know yet, but that they were sure it was serious and that they'd find out.
What did they eventually do regarding your arrest and charges?
Eventually, they found me guilty of signing Washington Irving to the letters and censoring the letters. I was then arrested.
So to clarify, you were found guilty by Colonel Cathcart of crimes and infractions they didn't even know about yet?
Yes, at my trial, they told me that after they had found me guilty of censoring letters and signing Washington Irving, they told me specifically in their words that I was guilty of crimes and infractions that I had not even committed yet.
So, thank you. Going back to Yossarian, did you see him again after your so-called trial?
Well, I saw on Colonel Corn's report that he was stabbed by a Nazi, so I went to see him in the hospital.
And what did Yossarian say to you during this visit?
Yossarian told me that he wasn't stabbed by a Nazi, that when he told Nately's horror of Nately's death, she stabbed him, and that's why he was in the hospital. He told me that the report was false.
So, upon talking to Yossarian and reading the report, what did you learn?
I learned that the report did not match Yossarian's account and that Colonel Corn had lied.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Prosecution, you may cross-examine.
So, Chaplain, you are a good friend of Yossarian's.
Yes.
And when did you first meet Yossarian?
I met Yossarian in the hospital.
And what did he say to you?
He told me that he was...
Objection or irrelevance?
This is gonna come to show that later on, this is like a prior instance of him malingering.
If there's a prior instance of malingering, why would you not charge for a prior instance? You saying that you know of crimes that you're not pursuing this defendant? Is there some reason to not pursue these other charges? I'm seeking clarity here, Counselor.
Well, it wasn't really proven because on his medical records there was a reason as to why, but he confessed to the chaplain.
And you know this how?
It's in the book.
It's not a sufficient basis for a line of questioning. If you have some direct evidence, certainly you may introduce it, or if you have testimony that you can solicit or has been previously solicited to form the basis of this line of questioning, that's fine. But I'm not sure that that's the case.
Well, then no further questions.
Witness may step down. Defense, you may call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, the defense calls Major to the stand. Could you please state your name and rank for the court?
My name is Major, and I'm a major in the U.S. military.
Could you please tell us a little bit about your life before you joined the Army?
My life was very odd before I joined the military. My dad had this warped sense of humor and decided to name me Major, and then didn't tell my mother. And because of my name, it was really hard for me to make friends when I was a kid.
Could you tell us about your life after you joined the Army?
When I got to the military, I made a few friends, but then when I was promoted to major, I lost them, and they really only promoted me to major so they could have a major.
So, did you do anything to earn this rank of major?
I did nothing to earn the rank.
How did you deal with the stress of losing all the respect from your fellow officers and friends of all ranks after becoming a major?
I entertained myself by assigning Washington Irving's name to official documents. That soon prompted an investigation, and when I was asked about it, I blamed it on the chaplain, and then I was never caught.
Well, what are military regulations regarding official documents?
Official documents need to be completely truthful and accurate down to the letter, including timestamps, area codes, military ID, and especially signatures.
What did you do after the CID investigation into Washington Irving?
I was upset, so I decided I wanted to go play basketball like I used to, so I decided to dress up so I couldn't be noticed, but the other soldiers noticed me and then beat me up.
What did you do in response to being beat up?
I was really upset, so because I thought that none of the other officers really did much, I decided that I was not going to see them. So if I was in my office, they weren't allowed to see me. They could only see me when I was not in my office.
So how did the squadron react to this?
The higher-ups really didn't notice that I really wasn't dealing with anybody. Yossarian was really the only one that cared.
Do military regulations allow you to forbade everyone from seeing you?
It really doesn't say. Because I'm a superior, I can really do what I want.
Thank you. No further questions.
So, you admit to faking Washington Irving's signatures.
I do.
And you did this regularly?
I did.
And in your witness statement, you said that your sergeant kept approaching you about the mission count, yes?
He did.
How did he approach you?
I was walking and he ended up hitting me in a ditch. He was just really concerned about the mission counts because they were skyrocketing.
Why didn't you charge soldiers with the assault of a superior?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance and calls for an opinion that's not stated in the book.
I do think it's a legitimate question. The witness just testified that the defendant tackled him in a ditch or hit him in a ditch. I'm curious as to the circumstance and rationale behind not charging the defendant with assault. I think it's a reasonable question.
I just didn't charge him with it because I felt it was a legitimate cause.
No further questions.
Defense, you may call your next witness.
Your Honor, at this time, the defense calls Orr to the stand. Could you please state your name, age, and occupation for the court?
My name is Orr. I'm 26 years old, and I'm a bomber pilot in the 256th Bombardment Squadron.
What is your relationship to the defendant, Yossarian?
I share a tent with him. We're good friends. We both share the drive to get out of this war alive. Although the bombing of our own base sort of makes that hard.
How many missions have you flown?
I've flown dozens of missions. I've been shot down 17 times.
Why wouldn't Yossarian fly with you?
Yossarian told me that he didn't want to die when he flew with me. Although that's crazy because I always land my plane safely. Heck, I mean, he was in the hospital for a leg injury. I've never been in the hospital.
Where were you when Yossarian was in the hospital with his leg injury?
I was on another mission. You know, one where I was shot down.
What happened after you were shot down?
Well, after I was shot down, I managed to land the plane safely, as I always do. But the life vest wouldn't inflate because Milo...
Again, goes to show a general corruption, and if she would be able to finish her statement, she would show that the superior officers were okay with Milo commandeering actual military supplies and using it for his off-base operations that were not sanctioned by the military.
Does this have particular bearing on any particular charge?
It goes to show that Milo's credibility and the fact that, again, the Colonel Cathcart was okay with Milo doing different things with corruption, and that he, again, it brings to questions his actual charge against Yossarian for being absent without leave.
Mm-hmm. I'm not quite seeing a real connection here between the facts, as you mentioned it. Your previous questions often had to do with the accuracy of documentation and organization in the military. If that theme is expanded upon somehow in this testimony, I'll allow it. But as far as just random questions about Milo and the circumstances of this particular witness's crash landing, I'm skeptical. So again, if you feel that you can connect these dots in some direct way, then let's do that. Otherwise, you'll have to move on to something new.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, how did you said the life jackets wouldn't inflate. Why was this?
Well, Milo left a note in the jackets that from M&M Enterprises that said he took them to make club soda in the officers' mess hall.
So, was it a common occurrence to have small events like this lead up to life-threatening situations in the squadron?
Yes, that's why I've crash landed so many times. I would do anything to escape Colonel Cathcart's tyranny.
What do you mean by escape his tyranny?
Well, that's the whole reason I've been getting shot down on all his missions. It's all on purpose so that I can escape.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Prosecution?
No questions, Your Honor.
Witness may step down. Defense, you may call your next witness to the stand. Is the court correct that this is your final witness?
Yes.
Okay.
The defense calls Yossarian to stand. Could you please state your name and occupation for the court?
I am Yossarian, and I am captain and lead bombardier of the 256th Air Force Squadron.
What does the title of lead bombardier mean?
It just means I'm the head of the plane, like I oversee other pilots.
How many missions have you flown?
I have flown 70.
And who flies with you on each mission?
Inexperienced pilots and just basically anyone. I've flown with people who are less experienced than me, as well as reckless people. And
Who did you fly with on Thanksgiving of 1943?
I was assigned on a mission with McWatt.
Could you describe who else was on the flight and your location?
Arfie was also on the flight, and I could only see him at the time from my positioning in the plane, but McWatt was the pilot.
How would you describe this flight?
It was very, very bumpy and dangerous, and we were flying very close to the ground.
Just to clarify, could you expand more on the maneuvers that he was doing that were so dangerous?
So McWatt was flying unusually close to the ground, and he was following the contour of the land. He refused to remain to maintain altitude, and I was scared for my life, honestly.
What was the risk of the plane crashing?
It seemed to me a very high risk.
How did you react to the situation?
So in a desperate attempt for my life, to save my life and Arfie's life and basically everyone's on the plane, I had to resort to physical force because McWatt either could not hear me over the motors or wouldn't listen. So I did indeed force him to stop by physical means.
What else could you have done to save the plane and the people on it?
Because he couldn't hear me over the motors or he chose not to listen, there really was not much else I could have done.
And what did McWatt think of your reaction to his dangerous flying?
Well, after we had gotten on the ground and my tactics worked, McWatt was not very upset with me. He was more sympathetic, and he kind of told me that maybe I wasn't fit to fly anymore and that I probably should be sent home. But it wasn't possible because of Cathcart.
So where did you go after that?
I went to the hospital.
Who was in the hospital with you?
So Dunbar was staying with me, and we were around each other a lot, and Nurse Stuckett was taking care of me.
What was the result of this hospital visit?
The commanding colonel started to yell at me.
Why did the commanding colonel yell at you?
Well, he accused me of taking indecent liberties on Nurse Stuckett.
Could you further explain the situation that made the commanding colonel yell at you?
Well, I was trying to console Nurse Stuckett because she was clearly in a state of just crying and she was not stable. So as I was trying to console her, the commanding colonel comes in and he tells me he reprimands me for taking indecent liberties on the nurses, and then immediately after Dunbar steps in and he takes responsibility for Nurse Stuckett's state of mind.
To clarify, it was claimed that Nurse Stuckett was touched inappropriately by who?
By Dunbar.
What other abnormal hospital visits have you had?
There was one time when I was in the hospital for my liver condition, but the weirdest thing started happening to me. I started to see everything twice, and it was crazy.
What treatment did you get?
I didn't really get any treatment.
What did the doctors tell you to do?
They I don't remember.
What did the doctors request you to do after you got no treatment?
They told me I probably should go home because I wasn't. Oh, in addition, wow, they told me that a soldier's family was coming in to visit, but the soldier had already been dead, and the doctors were saying that they didn't really want to break it to the family that their son had died right after they had made that long trip. So they asked me to pretend to be the dead soldier who they wanted the family to believe was alive.
And how did you respond to this request?
I did it because they didn't give me much choice, and
What other events were you forced into? What other events forced you into situations that you weren't quite comfortable in?
Could you repeat the question?
What other events forced you into a situation that made you uncomfortable?
Well, for one,
Your Honor, can I get a court's indulgence with my counsel?
oh,
How did you feel about the state of Rome?
it was very, very depressing. It was basically in ruins, and around me I saw a bunch of crimes being committed, and no one really seemed to care.
Can you explain what you were doing in Rome?
So while I was in Rome, well, the reason I had gone there in the first place was I was looking for Nate Lee's Horror's kid sister. Seeing what I saw around me, I couldn't bear to imagine her falling victims to the same horrors that I was experiencing, because there were kids being beaten, animal abuse, and I just really felt the need to find her.
Could you clarify the status and the population of the city? The status of the city.
So I saw animals being abused. I saw a kid being beaten. I saw a man warning that the police were coming, suggesting that, like, yeah, he was kind of afraid of the police, even though he hadn't visibly done anything. And then eventually I came upon a dead body of a woman, and it looked like she had fallen from a building.
How did you react to the sight?
I went into the building and I tried to find the root of what happened, like where she fell from and who did it.
And what did you find?
I found Arfie in the room that she was thrown from.
What was Arfie doing in the apartment that the girl was thrown out of?
Arfie was sitting there and just, I walked in and he confessed to me that he had raped her and that he wanted to keep her silent, so he killed her and threw her out the window.
For clarification, can you repeat to the court what Arfie confessed to?
Arfie confessed that he raped Michaela, the woman who was on the ground, and killed her because he did not want people to know.
What did you and Arfie discuss after his confession?
There really wasn't much time for discussion because right after we discussed how he might go to jail, but immediately people stormed in, the MPs stormed in.
And what did they do to Arfie?
They didn't do anything to Arfie.
Could you clarify the crimes that Arfie committed?
Arfie committed rape and murder.
And what was the reason? What was the reason for the MPs being there?
They said that, or they came to arrest me.
And what was the reason for your arrest?
They claimed that I was absent without leave.
No further questions.
Prosecution may cross-examine.
How did you console Nurse Duckett?
I was just kind of trying to calm her from crying. She was crying a lot.
But how exactly were you doing that?
Shoulder pats, just.
You testified that Arfie was in the plane with you, correct?
Yes.
But wasn't it only yourself, McWatt, and Al, the new bombardier?
No, it was Arfie.
Why didn't RP testify to this then?
It's for Arfie to say,
Seems
not
pretty
me.
important to get a new perspective on it.
Objection, Your Honor, counsel's testifying.
They were questions,
He said it seems pretty important to get.
but that was a question. I'm more concerned about the nature of the question than the form of it. Continue, Counselor.
And with Nurse Duckett, it also says that you resorted to physical force in your affidavit, correct? In controlling her.
I'm sorry, could you?
You resorted to physical force to. Oh no, sorry, that's my bad. I'm reading some questions.
So you said that you, in your affidavit, you said you resorted to physical force to make McWatt drive more safely. Wouldn't that put you in more danger just because he is the one flying the plane? And it says, like, you were physically, you know.
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
Given the nature of the witness's testimony thus far, I will allow it. The witness has already testified as to motivation for using physical force. I'm curious as to the witness's thought process as to the consequences. I think it's a fair question. You may continue.
Could you repeat it?
You resorted to physical violence to make McWatt drive more safely, yes?
Yes.
And did you feel that you had to resort to physical force even though he was the one who was driving?
Yes, that was exactly why, because he was driving and he was abusing his privileges as the pilot. He was driving recklessly and putting our lives in danger.
But wouldn't it put you in more danger because he was the one who was driving, and anything that would distract him from that would be a form of distracted driving and would put you in more danger?
Objection, Your Honor, pilot wasn't driving.
Flying. Sorry.
Thank you for the clarification, Counselor.
And did you have documentation for leaving Pianosa?
Yes.
Where is it?
I left it home.
Well, it should be. Objection on counsel's testimony.
Sustained.
No further questions.
Witness may step down. At this time, we will not adjourn court, but we will take a 5-minute recess to prepare for our closing statements from the prosecution and the defense. So approximately 5 minutes. We'll ask for continued order in the court. We are not breaking. We are merely taking 5 minutes to prepare. Teams may confer with one another.